that was in tech. But I really wanted to be a software engineer and ended up not actually getting a software engineering job as an internship before my senior year. And then senior year came around and basically the same thing happened. I had all these interesting side projects that I was working on. Those would give me the interview, but didn't end up getting the job that I wanted really at any of these places where I applied, and ended up taking this consulting job again with IBM. And then, I'm still working on things on the side. I eventually get an interview with Google. And at that point, I really, really dug into doing the lead code, learning how to pass a coding interview, really just coding a ton, spending a lot more time like working on apps, working on problems. And as terrible as it is, you just have to learn how to do the coding interview problem set. And then finally ended up landing the job at Google, a year after I graduated. So then after that, worked at Google for 3 years. It was an awesome experience. Was on an internal team there, and then worked on Google Search for a while in the New York office. That was when I first got hooked into Headstarter and Yasin, which was awesome. And from there, a friend convinced me, a very good friend, about this business idea he had, and he actually, he already had some customers and he already had some users, and he wanted to build, a more custom software product around it. So I started doing a lot of that in my free time. And we're building it, and eventually it got to a point where we landed a big contract from AWS with the project that we were working on. And that was enough to convince me to drop the project, and we raised some money and we worked on this thing for 2 years. And then we were acquired by a bigger fintech platform that was called stonks.com at the time, which is they've since changed their name to Sandhill Markets. And it was at Stonks for a while, and then worked there for a year and a half and grew the product, and have since left to work on some AI projects that I'm really, really excited about. And that brings me to today, where I'm still coding on these side projects. I'm working on a couple different things now, and I'm getting a grad degree, at MIT, having studied some of these things. I would say like the big takeaways and the things that I've learned, and Yasin kind of hinted at it earlier, but like every little bit of success, and that was both like convincing people to work with me on things, and then using the side projects that I had to get interviews, and then eventually getting the interviews. Like it all came down to just building things. And that was like building side projects, and that was building things that were interesting to me that were outside of my classes, and that was building to become a better programmer, and that was building to, just become a better software engineer all around. And some of those turn into, like only one of those actually turned into a business that I ended up working on. But I probably built, 10 or 15 things on the side. About half of those that had users other than me. So like I've actually put the money in, and a bunch of people have used them. But I think like doing the projects is just so helpful. And it just shows that, you're really committed to it. You understand these things in depth. You're not taking instructions from other people. You're doing it to build, and you're doing it to solve. Maybe it's scratch your own itch, or to build something that's useful, whatever it is. The second thing was, I had just assumed that once you build things and you're able to get in the interview, you know how to code, you're good to go. And the difference is, you really got to lock in to coding interviews. It's a silly system. It's unfortunately the best system. Looks like there's some questions. Is that what you're saying, Yasin?
Yeah, Jack, I just wanted to ask you some questions if you're cool with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Jack, what's your GitHub?
JF O'Brien 29.
Okay. Now you about to get a
And
lot of GitHub followers today. You cool with that?
I would love some. My commit graph is really terrible this year so far.
So terrible this year means 12, 13. That's terrible. This is you, right?
Yeah, this is me. I guess I'm mainly talking about January, February.
Oh, okay, correct. You've just
I've been doing a lot of these,
right.
like I think that I just love to build so much. I love to hop into code, but a couple of things I'm working on now, trying to track down some some bigger, B2B customers. And that's a lot more, talking on the phone to people or meeting people than it is just pushing new features. But yeah, give me a follow. A lot of my repos are private, but I'm going to open
Guys,
source something I'm working on pretty soon.
guys, how about give Jack a follow here? The best way to know this man is not, you can always add him on LinkedIn, but you look at his code and I'm sure he's gonna have some meaningful contribution, open source, things like that. Jack, can you tell me like what do you do when you're stuck? What do you do when you look at a piece of code, especially whether there's ample documentation or there's not ample documentation? Like,
Yeah.
what's the conversation you have in your mind when that happens? And I know maybe it doesn't happen as often right now, but when it did,
I mean, it still does. You introduce any new framework or any new,
yeah,
you know, code base that I'm not super familiar with, that you always get stuck. I kind of think that's really what makes a good programmer is someone who just you're able to get unstuck by any means possible. It's kind of like the same thing as being good at math, right? You just when you don't know, you just keep pushing forward. First thing I always do is, you have to, okay, how do I reproduce the error? Maybe that takes you 2 seconds, maybe that takes you 3 hours, but you have to be able to reproduce whatever's wrong, right? Um, and if you're just getting started, like maybe it's just understanding the error message. From there, it's finding like where exactly in the code is wrong. Okay, is it something with my environment, or is it something with my code? Is it something with a specific package? And I would really, there starts to be this tree forming of all the different possibilities of what could be going wrong when something goes wrong. Um, and the key, honestly, is patience and the ability to just go down every possible route that you're aware of. I think when you're first, starting out programming, you don't really realize how deep or wide that tree is of things that could go wrong. And you start to build intuition of what are all the different possibilities. And then you start to build intuition on, okay, like which route should I attack first to try and fix whatever's broken. Um, but it comes down to like you just have to get practice in doing it. It's not like debugging isn't something that can really be taught as much as it can be learned by doing.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely agree. Jack, I have one other question, and before I move on to
Yeah.
the audience, right? This is your LinkedIn right here. Look familiar.
Yeah, yeah, there it is.
So, I believe you had an incredible, career, incredible breakthrough, and then you chose to get a master's at MIT, right? And
Yeah.
specifically the Sloan. So, can you walk us through that decision making, and what are you looking forward to this tenure, this program?
Yeah, it's a pretty personal decision to me in that like I've had some success in software. Um, I've been working for 6 years. Um, the company that acquired us stonks. I didn't love the direction that they were going in. They were building a marketplace for secondaries that became more of a market problem. Can you find enough people to populate this platform? Then it became like a can we build this platform? And more specifically, I really wanted to get involved in climate tech, and that's really why I came to MIT. So involved in a lot of programs here. I think there's a lot of interesting ways to utilize, you know, data and AI to basically fight some of these problems, but also looking into deeper tech solutions. Like having coded a bunch, having ran technical teams, I thought this was the best way to kind of make the next big jump in my career, and I'm at the really beginning now.
I know we said that I would ask people. Actually, yeah, I have a question, but I can ask in the chat after. So let's start asking some of the questions.
Deke.
I think we have an enthusiastic person. Let's talk, speak them out. No report, yeah. All right, so there's a couple of questions here. So one of the questions um, is it possible to learn in like a coherent manner? Like, do you have like a systematized way of doing things, or you're more of like, let me just dive in the weeds and then I'll navigate from there, like a breadth first search or a depth first search, when you do your coding learning?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's in
You
terms of
guys know.
structured
Go
process.
ahead.
I think the main structured process I have for anything, whether it be like coding language or whatever, is you just got to know the breadth of what you're dealing with. Um, what are all the things I don't know? And then from there, I really just jump in and immerse myself. If that's coding, it's really simple. You can just build something using whatever framework, tools, thing you want to know. Um, if it's, if it's not, I like getting hands on as much as possible, but generally, understand the broad swath of things and then just go really deep. Because even just having deep knowledge on one particular thing you're trying to learn, I think is better than kind of high level, not useful knowledge.
Jack, what is one difference between big tech and startup?
Oh yeah, totally different life. Big tech was great. I had all my, I ate 3 meals a day at Google. I liked the team I was working on. Um, they paid me a good salary, but it was super siloed in terms of like I had very specific tasks. I was a small cog in a big machine. At one point on Google search, I wrote this code in like, I'm not even joking, January, and it didn't, I had to just keep having meetings and push that to launch. And it took until the end of February, right? So it probably took 6 weeks to launch. And the point is, and that's like search is one of the biggest software teams and products out there. But the bigger the team, the bigger the product, the more important it is to the company's business, and they're just not going to be willing to risk any bit portion of that business, right? And you just end up with a lot more. There's a lot more bureaucracy and oversight in the code, and there's some big benefits. Like the code I launched in search immediately, right? There's a couple million people who interact with that in some way. Um, as opposed to launching startups, maybe 10 or 20 at first, right? Ideally thousands, ideally more than that. But on the startup side, it's a lot more risk. You're getting paid less, if anything, in the early days, but you have unlimited control, and that's really great because the upside's really huge, and you learn a ton. Just like building, taking all that side project work and putting it into your main work is like really awesome. Really rewarding if things are going well, and really terrible if they don't at times. But I'd say, yeah, it's a risk trade-off. And it's really like in a bit like how much can you really exercise your coding muscles play out. You can code a ton when you're working for yourself or working on side projects. You can also do that within big companies, but they have to introduce that structure to be safe and protect the business.
Jack, thank you so much. I really appreciate this take here. I know there's a lot more questions, and I'm waiting
Cool.
to turn
Yeah,
into an AI
I
and make you available to everyone. Yes, you were saying something.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm available if you want to DM me on Twitter. It's linked on my GitHub or yeah. See if you share my contact, I'm happy to talk or
Absolutely, after this
with
call.
everyone.
Jack, I wanted to just share with you because you've seen Headstarter through a lot of updates. More recently, we've just recently updated our landing page, and I know how good of a front-end engineer you care about simple things that you are. Um, at Headstarter, we're trying to really become the best place for people to learn, get really good at interviews and algorithms, right?
Yeah,
You have seen kind of like the phases of Headstarter, and right now, we've kind of developed a system where there's accountability and there's structure. What are your thoughts on kind of like where we were before to like where we're evolving? I know you always text me, Yassine, I love the work you're doing. Just wanted to get a little bit, your take and share with everyone else.
yeah. Well, first of all, this landing page looks great, slick. Um,
Thanks.
I would say, yeah, everyone who I share this with, who's a developer my age, who's been coding for somewhere around like 5, 10 plus years, just totally agrees that there's a big gap between what they teach in school and what you actually need on a job. And it's kind of this weird thing where you have to go and learn how to do projects on the side, and learn to do week code on the side, and learn how to actually, do the work elsewhere. So I mean, I love the direction you're going in. I think as it specifically relates to AI too, yeah, ChatGPT can write code, but it can write really terrible code. And I think the people who are going to really run these systems in the future are going to be people who can orchestrate agents and understand like the underlying processes of what's going on. And you only get there by working hard and like actually thinking through the problems instead of saying, make me a landing page, make me a database, whatever. Um,
Yeah,
so
thank you.
yeah, I mean, I love the direction it's going.
Thank you so much.